For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Shotgun Spratling for instant analysis of USC's sixth practice of its 2021 fall camp. Today was the Trojans' first day in full pads, and Shotgun, I know it's hard to evaluate without pads, so in that sense, what were you able to see today?
Full pads, full pads, full pads. Every time the full pads come on for the first day, it's always exciting.
Yes.
You get to hear the thumping, hear the hitting, and the players are always super excited. They've been pent up kind of waiting on this, basically since the beginning of 2020. I mean, you didn't really have, spring camp last year. Fall camp was really muted, shortened season. Even spring camp, I feel like they were building up to this moment. And Jayla Mckenzie, I talked to him, and he mentioned that. He's like, yeah, partly the way that 2020 went, and he said, I'm just going to leave it at that. But also that, it's been so long since they've had a full off season and building into the season like this fall camp has been, that they were super excited to get the pads on. So it was definitely something to get an opportunity to see the offense and defensive line. That's the biggest thing you take away from the first full pad day. And I think the defensive line had some really nice pressures and was able to get in the backfield, but the offensive line was able to have some nice runs, did a lot of short yardage situations, and the offense was able to win some of those, and those have been the big question mark for the last couple seasons for USC in the air raid offense. And today they were doing some different things, some different looks, switching some things up. And one of the things I really liked was they switched the practice up, and it was just a couple drills, doing a couple of different things than they've done in the past. And I think that's something they have to do with a group of 18 to 22-year-olds, is constantly be, creating some variety, keep kids on their toes. And we've seen that the last couple of days where they've done some different drills. Today there was a 2-on-2 wide receiver DB drill, working on screens and DBs trying to get past a wide receiver screen, different things like that. So, those type of drills where you throw it in there, something that's new, you keep the kids on their toes, especially full pads. They were going full speed and trying to attack those type of plays. I think it was really good.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, we got to see some short yardage situation, 3rd and 1, also just overall red zone stuff. I thought Vavai Malapaya definitely shined in that portion. And like you mentioned, we saw some different wrinkles. We can't get into them. We can't get into scheme. But what did you take away? Because I know running backs is a hard position to really evaluate when they're just in jerseys and whatnot. Full pads, running backs. The healthy ones, what were you able to see?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is that half the group right now is kind of on the injury table right now. You got Darwin Barlow, who we're excited to see, get a good look at. Unfortunately, pulled the hamstring a couple days ago, or tweaked the hamstring, so kept him out. And Keontae Ingram, who had the ankle tweak, he's been kept out as well. But I think that's giving opportunities. And a guy like Keenan Kristen, who missed the spring, big opportunity for get as many reps as possible after running track in the spring and not getting those reps. I think it was really big for him, and I thought he had a pretty nice day. He had one run in a red zone-ish, 25 yards and in. They were doing some different plays, and he got through the first line of defense and made a linebacker miss and was gone. And that's the type of thing he can do. Yeah. And the big thing I talked to Mike Jinks about him was, can he pass protect? If you can't pass protect, you're not going to get off the bench, basically, is what Mike Jinks said. And he said that's something it's going to be a constant thing for Keenan Kristen, but also the new guys coming in, who is going to be able to pass protect, to be able to be out there 3 downs and be a 3-down back for them. That's what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. We've been talking to the running backs, and they said that Mike Jinks has made it clear that he wants a 1A, 1B running back this season. Did Jinks go into where he feels the running back stands right now?
Not necessarily as far as a ranking or anything. Obviously, Vi's going to be up there. He's going to be in that mix. He's a guy that they just count on. They can trust. They know exactly what they're getting from him. But the pass protection is going to be key. And one of the things I asked Mike Jinks is, when young guys come in, how do you kind of go about kind of teaching the pass protection, and what's the hardest part about it? And he said, is identifying where that extra man is coming from, knowing that it's not just, it's a man, it's an area that you need to be looking at. You have a coverage area basically as far as the pass protection, so you need to be looking at it, whether it be the corner coming in, and that was something that the defense got the offense with a couple times. Jinx pointed out was corner blitzes coming off and the running backs not picking that up. And he said I followed up with him. He said, I really want the running backs to be looking at the defense like a quarterback does. I want them to see where the safeties are. I want them to see, where all the pieces are, and not just, hey, I think I need to pick up this guy. Be seeing the full picture so you have a better idea, even when you're not running the ball, but when you're pass protecting as well.
Mm-hmm. You and I were both in Clay McGuire's scrum. It was my first time talking to him, and I thought it was interesting. Got to ask him about certain things we've seen so far in practice, one of those being Jonah Monheim getting 3 consecutive days at left tackle, and then Cortland Ford, who we thought was the favorite coming in for that left tackle competition. He's been getting second-team right tackle reps, so it's curious. What do you have to say about that whole switch-up?
Yeah, those two guys have been flipping back and forth between left tackle with the first team and right tackle with the second team, but Monheim has kind of moved forward, and Clay McGuire said, yes, right now he would be the guy. He's the guy that's at the front of that competition right now. And you asked him about Cortland Ford because we haven't seen Casey Collier the last couple of days, and Clay McGuire wouldn't, go into that. He referred us to Clay Helton on that one. Clay Helton does all the injuries, all the absences, but because Casey Collier hadn't been there, Mason Murphy's actually stepped up into the left tackle spot with the second team, and you would think, okay, why not get one of those guys a little bit more left tackle reps with the second team? But he said, no, we need those guys to bounce back and forth because they want, they're looking for 7 to 8 guys that they can trust. Yeah. So, they're going to have a backup center. They're probably going to have a backup tackle and a backup guard and go about it that way. And he said you can do it different ways as an offensive line coach. You can have, a backup left side guy or a backup right side guy or do tackles and guards. And he said they're looking for a guy that can do both. So, if they get an injury at left tackle or right tackle, whoever is that third guy that doesn't crack the starting lineup, that's the guy that has to step in for them. So that's what they're looking for there, and that's why you've seen Cortland Ford there. But Monheim has been a guy that just continues to impress. Yep. Continues to put strong practices together, and the coaches are noticing it, and right now he just is making his move, and we'll see if he can continue to build on it. Super friendly kid off the field to the interviews, like he came back and gave Ryan Abraham, he said, I forgot to give you this answer. Yeah. There's someone else that I should have mentioned, and that's the kind of kid he is. But on the field, he's got a nasty streak. So he'll put some guys in the dirt and kind of lean over them and crawl on top of them and do all those small things the offensive linemen do to really annoy defensive players. So he's got a little nasty streak in him, and I think that's what USC needs at their left tackle position, stepping in and contributing with potentially those 4 veterans that are there.
Mm-hmm. He did that in high school, and he's only continuing so far at USC. I thought it was interesting, too. Clay McGuire said, everyone thinks that the left tackle should be your best guy on the line, but he said that's not necessarily my philosophy, and we heard the opposite kind of from Tim Drevno previously.
Yeah, when I asked Tim Drevno about Elijah Vera Tucker moving to left tackle, what went into it, he said, you need your best offensive lineman to be your left tackle, to protect the blind side of your quarterback. And Clay McGuire said, no, that's not necessarily, the way he goes about it. He says, at Washington State, oftentimes, his right tackle was his best lineman. And part of that is because you're getting the ball out so quickly, you need both those tackles to be athletic and move enough. And it's not necessarily that, a team is going to line up their best pass rusher to the field side or to the left side, coming off the edge behind the quarterback. Sometimes they're flipping, the formations based on, field and boundary. Sometimes, it's just different things like that rather than just lining straight up. So with the proliferation on that, he says, you got to have 2 really good tackles. Yeah. He said it's really simple. You just want 2 really good guys to make it really easy for you. But that's why he's not really stressing that the best guy has to be at left tackle, but they're looking for the 5 best guys. Yeah. And then I asked him what was kind of the skill sets they're looking for at the tackle position, in particular at left tackle. He said there's not really a set thing that they're looking for there. It's just the guys that produce. Yeah. And so that's kind of interesting to me. It's not like, we got to have 6'7", we got to have this size, this size or strength or whatever. It's the guys that are going to block out there and keep Slovis upright.
Mm-hmm. And I also asked him about the balance between finding the best 5, but also establishing that chemistry and not jeopardizing that prior to the season. And it sounded like there was a sense of urgency for him that they need to figure out the starting 5 pretty soon here. So definitely something we're going to watch for. But a guy mentioned by Clay McGuire and by Clay Helton was Jayla Mckenzie, and how he's kind of taken a step forward over the offseason. It seems like he was another guy that Robert Steiner kind of locked eyes on and was like, well, I'm going to take care of you. So you got to talk to Jaylen. What do you have to say about that?
Well, first, going back to your point about chemistry, is that Jayla Mckenzie, was asked by RJ Abadia from our site, what's the ideal amount of time that you would have? And he said, man, that's a really good question. You would like to have the whole off season. He said, but in a camp situation, you're putting things together day by day and you're kind of going about it. So I think if they have a couple weeks, they'll feel pretty comfortable, and especially that you have 4 veteran guys that kind of know each other. Yeah. And Jaylen said a big difference is hey, you can go to that guy's room now. You know, you can stop by a guy's dorm room. Unlike last year where you couldn't hang out with people, you can't go in and kind of pick each other's brain. Like, what'd you see on this? You can't watch a little tape together, those type of things if you're working with a guy on one side or whatnot. So there are some differences. So I think when they do establish and say, hey, you guys are going to be the starting five, I think you'll see those guys kind of getting together and doing some things off the field to kind of build that bond a little bit quicker. So I think they'll have a better chance than they did in the 2020. But Jayla Mckenzie was a great interview, had a lot of great things to talk about. And you talked about Robert Steiner. Clay McGuire mentioned that Robert Steiner and the strength staff has really helped Jayla Mckenzie because he said when he came in, he had stiff hips and he wasn't able to fully utilize his full strength, his full power. And said, and, you know, Jayla Mckenzie was asked about it, and he said, yeah, you know, Bobby Steiner and the boys. He didn't mention him by that name.
I was about to say, did he say that name?
No, didn't mention him by that name, but that obviously we know who that is. But he said the strength staff, what they've done is there's so many position-specific drills and lifts that they're doing that are working not only the big muscles but the little muscles around it. So not only, you know, your chest and your shoulders, but all the small muscles that are in your shoulder to help you lock out when you're an offensive lineman and doing those type things. And he said the hips, obviously, they're doing a ton of drills that are position specific, so that helps them, you know, with their lean, with their, you know, with the way that they're, you know, in their stance, all those different things that are being helped because it's the small muscles that they're really working on to anchor as they're pass protecting and whatnot. So he was really complimentary of the strength staff, and this is very similar to the things we've heard from a lot of players about how each individual positions are, you know, have really been able to step forward with some of the things they're doing and not just adding bulk necessarily, which was something that the P was a little bit upset about early in the summer. But Jayla Mckenzie talked about that, and, you know, just how he's going about, you know, this fall camp and trying to, you know, make the best of his, you know, potentially final season here at USC.
Now, as far as injuries go, I feel like Rehab Island was much more populated today. We don't have a full injury update. We'll get that from Clay Helton, I believe, on Saturday. But most notable for me was Britton Allen. He came out and was on the trainer's table for the majority of practice. Looked like a left knee issue. He was able to walk out of Howard Jones Field at the end of practice on his own power, but definitely had a little gimp to him. But otherwise, you've mentioned some of the injuries, but who else stood out to you?
I mean, Britton Allen's the only one that we saw happen during practice today. It was in a one-on-one drill. You know, he gave up a touchdown it looked like he slipped or stepped wrong, and, you know, that created the separation. And then you see him leave the field, and you always kind of wonder about a situation like that. But there were some guys from yesterday that we didn't see that left yesterday's practice. Malcolm Epps, and that's one. He's walking pretty gingerly, so we're going to be keeping an eye on that one for sure. Josh Follow also at the tight end position. We mentioned the two running backs that didn't practice today. You also had a couple wide receivers with Kyron Ware-Hudson still not full participant. Gary Bryant Jr. with a hamstring. You know, Colin Mobley, the defensive lineman, freshman defensive lineman, done some nice things so far. He was out of practice as well. That's another one we don't really know much about. And then there was a couple absences. We mentioned Casey Collier not being here. It was the second day in a row that he wasn't at practice. But also Kobe Pepe and Jamar Sakona, the two defensive tackles, the two redshirt freshmen, both were not at practice today. So Stanley Tauafu got a ton of reps. Corey Foreman got a ton of reps as well. Just the defensive line, there weren't a ton of bodies because obviously Drake Jackson can't participate as a full participant. You got some guys, you were in full pads and being able to tackle in some drills, but you had some guys in there as well, like Greg Johnson and Xavier Alfred are still going through the final stages of the acclimation period, so they had to come up and thump, but couldn't, you know, give the full tackle. So you did have some guys that were missing some time as well there with Drake Jackson, some of those guys. So there were a number of bodies that weren't able to participate. So this wasn't like a full throttle, full scrimmage. I think we'll get that on Saturday. We'll get the first one of those, and hopefully everybody will be acclimated, and hopefully these couple of guys, I think they're probably taking a little bit light right now to try to get everyone ready for Saturday so everyone can show what they can do in a scrimmage.
Yeah, Malcolm Epps is the one where I'm a little bit curious if that's going to linger on. It's a turf toe, and those don't really clear up easily. But like you alluded to, Shotgun, the schedule going forward, tomorrow, Friday, we'll have an earlier practice to cover. It's at 10 in the morning, and then an earlier practice on Saturday. It's on starts at 1:50, so we'll get you the news and notes there. But any final thoughts before we wrap this one up, Shotgun?
No, always fun to see the full pads out, and it was really interesting talking to some of the offensive linemen and talking to Clay McGuire, and I'm getting a little bit more confidence in that group and what they could potentially do, and just the fact that they're moving in the right direction. One of the things that Jayla Mckenzie said about, I just kind of, give me your assessment of Clay McGuire. What's he like? How's it been going so far? And he said he knows the offense so well that it's not just focusing on what your task is on a play, but what is all the small things that will make a play successful. So he can explain exactly why you're doing this, what you need to do, and I think that that's going to only help the offensive line take their game to the next level.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's sixth practice of fall camp for Shotgun Spratling. I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.